I'm Navan, and today I'll be talking to you about food and earth. So, actually, in 2017, I had the opportunity to head down to Vietnam with a volunteer group known as Eco Vietnam. Over there, we mainly conducted many service projects such as building schools. However, there was one point which I noticed something. Unlike in Singapore, where we have easy access to food, in Vietnam it's significantly harder, and most of the people there depend on whatever they grow as their main source of income and food. So, I'd like to bring up an issue, right? So in 2019, the Mekong River experienced its worst drought in 100 years. For those who do not know what the Mekong River is, the Mekong River flows through 6 different Asian countries, namely China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and Myanmar. It is also home to the world's largest fishing industry, and also, to no surprise, it supports 60 million people and their livelihoods. So you might be wondering, how does this relate to my talk today? Well, Vietnam experienced seasonal monsoon rains. And during these monsoon rains, flood pulse is produced, bringing together with it sediments and flooding floodplains that's essential for agriculture. However, it was evident that the drought has impacted the river and its communities significantly. As you can see here, well, the main blame would be infrastructure development as well as climate change. And the latter is the topic for today. In 2019, Vietnam experienced a 1.4% drop in crop yields as compared to the previous year, with the yield for rice being 43.45 million tons and cassava at 10.11 million tons. So honestly, to us, 1.4% may not seem like a lot, but to Vietnamese farmers who conduct sedimentary farming, it's their source of income and their only source of food. So for them to lose 1.4% is the equivalent to us losing basically rice every day. So question this: if a country like Vietnam, which can maintain its own food supply through agriculture, but is vulnerable to climate change, how will a country like Singapore, which is dependent on importing food to sustain our own food security, fare with climate change? Well, many can say Singapore is a nation of food lovers, and most of the people here will agree. In fact, food is an important facet of Singapore's national identity. Singaporeans would say that instead of eating leaf, they will live to eat. So, food not only represents our culture, our language, and our heritage, but it also represents every religion, every country, and everybody. Food is something that actually brings us all together as one. So, is it not ridiculous that even in Singapore, a first world, well-developed nation, has members of community that is still experiences food insecurity? So during the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, as you know, most of the world had closed their borders as well as reduced exports of food and other products to countries around the world. And this means that most people started to panic buy, and supplies decided to be less than what we will need. So prices flat. In fact, those who are living on the margin and below margin will have suffered, as they will not be able to afford or barely afford the food that they need, which is a basic human right. So if a pandemic like COVID-19 has exacerbated the issue of food security, how would a global, more prevalent issue such as climate change impact the world? So agriculture plays a crucial role in the economies of not just developing, but also developed nations as well. It not only provides a stable source of food to ensure their own food security, but also provides them a source of income and employment. So it's not a surprise that approximately a quarter of the earth is used for agriculture and farming practices. In many regions, including Europe, North America, and Australia, and recently Brazil, China, and India, they have managed to raise their crop use to sustain their own population and also conduct exports. Yet, in many low-income nations such as Africa and also many parts of Asia, agriculture continues to move into marginal and fragile lands. For instance, according to estimates by the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, almost no highly productive land is left. However, improvements in agriculture and land use are essential to ensuring that we have food security, elevation of poverty, and also sustainable and environmental development. Not to mention, as global temperatures continue to rise, growing seasons for crops such as rice and wheat continue to shorten. This would threaten our food supply, as not only basic food staples such as this, we also have our oceans, which are highly unpredictable. For example, the temperature, the tonicity, and the acidity. This would actually cause the fish population to decline and hence affecting your seafood supply. So this actually impacts a lot of coastal communities and other communities that depend heavily on fishing as their main source of income and food. Especially in Singapore, did you know that 13% of vegetables and only 9% of fish is locally sourced? This means that should countries like China, India, or Indonesia cut their supplies to Singapore, we would not be able to sustain our own population. So we cannot just look at climate change being the main cause of food insecurity. Human actions play a part too. So let me ask you this. Who here has not wasted food before? Honestly, there should not be any hands. Alright? So if you take a look at this graph, so this graph represents a breakdown of food waste in every country around the world. As you can see, most of the countries actually are above the black line. The black line represents the expected intake of food per human, average adult human consumption. And anything above that line should be considered as food waste. Now, you might be asking, where did I get this data, considering that food waste is not something that most countries would track off. So I had to manually comb through data in order to include analyzing obesity trends, nutritional studies, and a myriad of other factors to present to you with this. Note that Singapore is part of the countries that's actually above the line. Alright, so we need to note that food waste is that to combat food insecurity, more must be done. Instead of throwing away excess food, you should be keeping it or saving it for a meal later or in the future. Instead of buying what you want, buy what you need. So, many people in the world are not able to have luxuries such as us, so we need to realize that we actually are very fortunate. And not to mention that as demand for food supplies as well as luxuries continue to increase, more greenhouse emissions will be emitted into the atmosphere. This means the weather will get hotter, and this means your electricity bill will go up as well. So do the math. You may not be stopping it, but you are contributing to it. All of this advice aside, Nothing will work unless action is taken. Action brings impact, not words. Decades of summits, talks, and discussions has not born any impactful changes. Words do not translate into action. Action creates impact. Impact creates change. And change gives hope. And I quote Greta Thunberg. Once we start to act, hope is everywhere. So instead of looking for hope, look for action. Then, and only then, hope will come. At this point, we cannot stop climate change. Neither can we continue contributing to it. The only thing we can do now is to slow it down, adapt to it, reduce your carbon footprint, be more environmentally friendly. If countries such as Bhutan is able to do it, we can do it too. So it's time for us to stop. It's time for us to wake up. It's time for us to act. It's time for us to care. Thank you.